What's up, everyone? Welcome into Guerilla Hockey with JJ and Jesse. This is a first-time edition for us, Jess. We've never done a podcast while you're on the road. I think you just got to Boston today. I'm still here in Denver in my basement, and look at us doing a podcast together. But this is a first-time edition for Guerrilla Sports here.
Yeah, we're hoping that the maybe some video on this one, but yeah, we're trying to figure out how to make this work. And every video podcast software is fighting us today, so this might just be an audio only one. But yeah, no, we're in separate places, and I gotta say, JJ, it's great to see you. I think you're the only person that has been out with illness longer than Miles Wood was.
So I was out with COVID, and I missed 3 home games. I was incapacitated for about 6 days. I quarantined in my basement. And after seeing Miles Wood come back, I'm like, after what I went through with that, because this version of COVID was worse than the first time I got it several years ago. This was just a lot worse. And I'm like, Miles Wood had to have been dealing with what I was too. It just seemed that way. But yeah, COVID was a trip. There was one night for me. I think I just got to paint this picture because I found it hilarious. I was a little bit too deep on the NyQuil, and was playing around with my little music. I have like some music, a loop machine, right? I don't know if you've seen those people that can make loops. And so I play around a lot on the loop machine. So I'm heavy into some NyQuil on the loop machine, wearing nothing but my brand new robe and my primetime glasses, my Coach Prime glasses. And that was the peak of COVID for me. Just, I think there were some pros and cons, but I tried to have a good time while I could.
Yeah, thank you for putting that in my head. I appreciate that.
It was pretty sweet. I'll have to show you some of the tracks I made.
I bet it was.
While high on NyQuil.
Oh,
but no, let's get into the trip. Avs are playing some good hockey, 6-2 through the month of January so far, and doing pretty decent in Canada. I mean, that Montreal loss was a head scratcher for sure, but I think Avs fans are pretty pleased with what they've seen so far, at least through this last stretch of games here.
Yeah, I didn't. You don't love losing to Montreal. Uh, Again, even though it was kind of a weird game where they don't really mind the way they played, and Montreal blocks a lot of shots. Excuse me, Jake Allen has a decent night. I don't know. I didn't like that one, but you love the resiliency against the Leafs, and you love the pushback last night in Ottawa. That we talk at times about with this team, like that would have been an easy game for them to, kind of feel sorry for themselves when they go down 4-2, and hey, we're tired on the second half of back-to-back. We got in late. We're without all these different players. We got all these injuries now. No Val. And I kind of made the joke to Jared Bednar after the game, saying, usually teams in the second half of back-to-back get more tired. It seemed like the Avs kind of went the other way. So it was good to see that. You didn't want to go into Boston chasing the road trip. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think you want to lose. I mean, we know Montreal's brutal, right? They just lost at home to San Jose last week, but Ottawa is kind of equally as bad. So you can't really have 2 losses to teams like that back to back. And we've seen it. We've discussed it, Jess. They have had some ugly losses throughout the year. The teams they just have no business losing to, Montreal can just be added to that list.
Yeah, and the one thing that we do kind of keep coming back to, you and I keep saying, like, and it's part of the reason Nathan McKinnon was on 32 Thoughts this week. He did a sit-down with Elliot Friedman. I don't know if you listened to it. But
yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to that.
He talks in that interview about kind of his growth and, being able to turn the page and have the perspective of there being 82 games. And I mean, like, JJ, you don't have to have played hockey, but like just anyone that's played sports, I think hockey is unique in this, and that from a young age, you play a lot of games in a season, youth sports that kind of gets watered down sometimes, but, you start learning the importance at a young age of there are a lot of games. You're going to have bad games. You're not going to have it every single night, and just being able to turn the page, not get hung up on stuff. And I don't want to get too into maybe what you talked about. But he talks about that being a big lesson for them along that cup run of, yeah, you're going to lose games. You can't sit there and dwell on every up and down, and that's the part of like I've tried to take that away from when he told us that last year. I've tried to take that away in my perspective of like, yeah, it's easy to sit there and beat up on the loss to Montreal or whatever, but who was it that you just said beat the Panthers tonight? Was it San Jose?
Detroit.
Detroit. I'm sorry. Yeah. But so there's top teams around the league losing games that you think they should be winning every night, and that kind of goes back to just what you and I have talked about so many times now of that there's no, like, in my opinion, there's no like true standouts in the league. The top of the league is totally up for grabs right now.
Yeah, I mean, and sticking with Nathan MacKinnon on that 32 Thoughts interview, a great interview, by the way. Hilarious to me that the Avalanche show up to Canada and land in Toronto and suddenly are on every national, or at least Toronto podcast that there is. I don't know if you saw C-Mac was also on Frank Saravelli's podcast. There's some local podcasts that all these guys are welcome to join if they're ever in the mood.
Yeah.
But no, Nathan MacKinnon on 32 Thoughts, talking about his ability to turn over from game to game. I guess his comfort with the idea that, you're not going to score every game. I mean, we've heard him say this his whole career, but even he says in the last 3 years it's kind of actually coming true, right? And I thought something that was interesting about that little comment is he credits two people for his mindset shift in that regard. One of them was Gabe Landeskog, and the second is Andrew Cogliano, which isn't surprising to me and you who hang around the locker room. We know Andrew Cogliano has a little bit of a leadership vibe to him, but I didn't know that Andrew Cogliano and Nathan MacKinnon kind of had a relationship like that where Cogliano can be like, look, this is the way you be a leader. This is the way you kind of develop yourself as a professional. And just interesting to hear that those are the two guys he really credits for just changing his mind on things.
The Cogliano one both surprised me and it didn't. We've heard Nate was the first one that I heard talk about the now, kind of famous Game 6 speech that Cogliano gave in the Cup final. Nate was the first one that I heard, kind of talk about that and then kind of parlay that into like, whoa, what a voice this guy, has in the room, and just came in immediately and earned that respect. So when I heard him say that, I was like, oh, that's why he thinks so highly of him, is that he came in. And I mean, Jared Bednar talks about it all the time too with Andrew Cogliano of like, nobody takes better care of themselves. You and I see him all the time. Guys are, and again, they all work their absolute tails off. So this isn't even a shot at other guys, but like other guys are grabbing their lunch and getting back to, home, getting back to the hotel, whatever. And Andrew Cogliano is doing high knees in the hallway. You know what I mean? Like, wind sprints and ladders, not high knees.
The hip rotation thing he likes to do too, right? Where he's really getting those hip flexors activated.
Yeah, and even if you walk by him, if you listen to, he's even working on his breathing. Like his everything about what he does is to prepare and to be as finely tuned as possible. And I think that was something that Nate, naturally kind of gravitated to.
Yeah, and Andrew Cogliano is just such an amazing specimen to me because of exactly that. Not only does he have that mindset and that approach to the game, but he's had it for so long. He's been in the NHL since he was 19 years old. Now he's 36, so he's his longevity combined with the amount of effort and dedication and discipline you have to be doing the things that Andrew Cogliano does. Nathan MacKinnon looks at that and is like, this is my guy. This is the kind of guy I can really get along with. And I mean, it's no secret that Andrew Cogliano has been able to do that because of his approach to the game, or been able to play as long as he has because of his approach to the game. So, a great fit there of Andrew Cogliano and Nathan MacKinnon. And I just thought it was unique.
Don't forget, I mean, not that he was ever, a massive point producer, but this is a guy that Andrew Cogliano, multiple times, 40-plus points, 20 goal scorer once, high teens, several times, couple times, I think 18. And so,
not to mention the Iron Man streak he had for a long time till he got suspended.
Right, the Iron Man streak. Like there's a lot. We see Andrew Cogliano now as, the depth, fourth line, penalty killing winger, but this was a legitimate, middle six, borderline top six player for a long time. And still plays a very key role for the Colorado Avalanche, not only in the leadership, but on the ice as well.
Yeah. You kind of brushed over the Val Nichushkin situation. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Brush over it, but we weren't talking about it.
You brushed over. You absolutely. You just said, Val. Oh yeah, Val. So let's get to Val Nichushkin. What are you hearing? I know.
Conversation.
I know. Well, yeah. You brushed over it so we could get to it later. You're just a perfect little partner in that sense. Yes. You're like, I don't want to go through the whole rundown in my first sentence of the podcast. Let's get to things bit by bit here. So I know you're in touch.
Partner. Thank you.
You talked to somebody within the organization. You have some sources. What are you hearing on the Val Nichushkin situation? Just what's your stance on it? I know it's so unfortunate to see because of how well he's been playing, but it's also fortunate to see somebody have just that freedom to be able to vocalize what they're actually going through and seek help and seek treatment, and at the end of the day, be a better person for it.
Yeah. Honestly, man, I don't know really much beyond the official statement that the NHLPA and then later Val Nichushkin put out his own statement. I really don't know much beyond that. These situations are always, with player assistance program, they're always a little tricky because, we have to walk that line between, doing our job and making sure that, we understand what's going on and informing folks with everything that we can or should. But with this type of stuff, really, this does kind of border on that line of like, okay, he's publicly saying I need to go get some help. I need to go seek some treatment. We're really not sure what. How much of that should be public knowledge? I don't really know. I think that's kind of up to everyone individually to decide how they feel about it. But I really don't know much beyond, what we've seen. I did ask Jared Bednar, are you happy about the fact that you guys have a culture here that, guys don't feel like they need to go through stuff silently? I thought his answer was interesting. Essentially saying, yes, we want to be somewhere that guys are comfortable, but gosh, it'd be nice if this wasn't the second time we were having to, go through this.
I also picked up a hint of like, I'm happy he's going to go ahead and do this now and not in the playoffs this time. Right? I got a little bit of subtlety there from Jared Bednar.
Yeah. And man, I don't know. It's as you can tell, it's hard. It's hard to, have a big opinion on this because we just don't know much. This is the hard part. One of the things I've tried to do is narrow down a little bit of like what it is, because the player assistance program, it's kind of a broad strokes, department, sector of the NHL where you had, you've had guys go in there for mental health reasons. I believe, I don't quite remember if Colin Wilson went into the program for OCD or if he, if it was different treatment that he talked about when he kind of, told all. And then you've had guys like Sam Girard, who just recently went in there, for help with alcohol, substance abuse, alcohol abuse. So it's just hard. It's hard to say exactly what it is. The statement does kind of hint at something similar as to what Girard just went through. You hope if he is in need, if he's recognizing that he needs to get some help, he's heading down a road where he needs to get some help. On the human side, you're happy he's getting it, and you're happy that he's, doing what he thinks is best for him, his family. He's got a kid now. But to your point, JJ, it would be silly to act like there aren't hockey implications to all this, and that's not something that, obviously it crosses people's mind. And you hope that this is something that he's getting taken care of at a time right now, because he's saying, look, I think this is something I can get under control, and I don't want to put my team in a bad position like I did last year. I see my teammate Sam Girard doing something about it. I'm going to do something about it too.
I'm curious to how much of a role Sam Gerard played in this. Not literally, like not walking up to Val and grabbing his shoulder and saying, "Hey, pal, this is what I think." But Val maybe watching from distance, seeing Sam Gerard go through it. He went through it rather quickly. Looks like he's bouncing back relatively well. I think Val maybe looks at that and goes, I am still dealing with something right now. Everything went really well and smoothly for Sam Gerard. Everybody treated him really nicely. Kind of the opposite of how it went for Val during the playoffs last year, right? I don't feel like it was received very well by people. So I think that gave Val Nichushkin the confidence to say, I think I'm going to try this again because I still have some things that I need to work out. And I think that's fantastic. It speaks to exactly what you said to Jared Bednar about the culture. But I think it also gives a little bit of hope because it feels like Sam Gerard walked in and then walked out of that player assistance program, right? Where I feel like with other players that we've seen in the past, that definitely seems to stretch longer. So I think maybe Val just looked at Sam Gerard and said, if I can just do exactly what he just did, I'll be so much in such a better position.
Yeah, and again, that's to your point about Sam Gerard was, 2-3 weeks, something like that. I don't remember what the exact timeline was, but like that's the other part of this that just does kind of wrap a little bit of mystery around what all it is that goes into the player assistance program, and who determines how long players are there? What are the stipulations for players being able to return, to play? I've tried to do some digging, and really most of what I've gotten is like, well, it's pretty case by case, and so it's hard to say for sure. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. To me, I look at it at the end of the day saying he's saying that he needs some help. Glad he's getting some help.
Yeah, I mean, I know as Avs fans, it's hard to not put the Avalanche in front of the person, right? And be like, oh, no, he's going to hurt our team now. Hopefully he's back in time for the playoff. Really, that's out the window. Really, nobody cares about that, right? Going back to the Nathan McKinnon interview on 32 Thoughts, it was interesting. It almost sounds like he thinks he's past halfway in his career, right? And just how quickly it goes. He even said our careers are short. It's so much more important for the person to take care of the person than it is for the person to take care of their NHL career, because the NHL career passes in the blink of an eye, and he still has to deal with himself, his family, his issues long after he's out of the spotlight of Avalanche fans.
Now, here's the one thing that I do want to say. R.E. what you're talking about. Because one of the things that I do feel like this isn't necessarily exclusive to NHL players, but I feel like they get a lot of these days. It used to be something that people really revered, and I think it went too far that direction as well. But, there are a lot of people that heavily criticize when guys play through injuries, try to come back in games when, we find out later they have been, injured pretty bad. Guys try to come back early. Val Nichushkin plays in the Stanley Cup final on the broken foot. There's a story from years ago about Patrice Bergeron, I believe it was Bergeron, with the punctured lung. Like, you hear about all this stuff, and players can sometimes get criticism for it. Andrew Cogliano coming back into the, Game 5 last year with the broken neck. And as much as these guys, it's so important for them to stop and take care of themselves. For me, I understand why you see players push themselves like that sometimes, and it's what you're talking about. Their careers are so short. They've dedicated their entire lives to getting to this point. And the idea of removing yourself from that in key moments and moments that you've literally spent decades preparing for, to remove yourself from those moments, I think can sometimes be hard for those guys. And that's something that I think is hard to relate to for a lot of people, because, look, call it right, wrong, and different, however you feel about the amount of money they get paid that amount of money because it's a highly, highly specialized skill set that professional athletes have. And it's not just the skill, it's being able to be mentally strong enough to make the sacrifice they do, to train the way that they do, to be in the public spotlight, to wear that kind of pressure. And again, all of that is to say, it's a big reason why it is so important that guys, make sure they are taking care of themselves mentally, because their careers are short and it feels like everything, and it is for these guys at times. But because it's everything and because you spend your whole life doing it, I do think it's sometimes easy to forget. You hope there's a whole lot of years left after you're done playing.
Right, exactly. You know who Delonte West is, the former NBA player. He used to play for the Mavericks, the Cavs. He kind of played a lot of different places. And video surfaced of him a few years ago, not even that old, already homeless and broke because exactly that, right? He kind of just lived in the moment of the NBA, spent a lot of money, didn't take care of his finances, probably didn't take care of himself and mentally or physically really, and you kind of get kicked aside once you're out of the league, right? Nobody really cares about the former players. Everybody cares about their team and who's playing and who's going to help them climb the rankings that particular night. So everybody, claims to care about Val Nichushkin right now. In 10 years, when he's long out of the NHL, long out of Colorado, long out of the United States, and an afterthought for a lot of these Avalanche fans, and he's still dealing with this, I mean, he's the only one that's stuck to deal with it, and Avs fans have moved on. So you got to nip it in the bud, try to take care of it as early as you can. But he's in his late 20s right now, so pivotal time for him to just kind of, grow into an adult. He has a child now, too, so I'm sure that importance has elevated even more for him. So, I'm in full support of him just getting right and just focusing on himself. I think everything's fine, and at the end of the day, we're talking about a game.
JJ, the inspirational speaker. And 10 years and no one cares about him.
Well, am I right or am I right? I'm just calling like I see it.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I think that's I get what you're saying. Again, I do still come back like for me, and I'm not like confronting you about this, but I actually don't like the whole it's just a game thing, because for them it's not. It's literally their whole lives. It's their whole lives. It's everything that they've. For Val Nichushkin is how old's Val? 26, 27? For the last 25 years, that dude has woken up 90% of the days of his life and dedicated hours to this. So that's the part to me where I think there's the disconnect between what it is that these guys go through in their head and us, on the outside, fans of the game, fans of the team, whatever category you want, you want to talk about. It's just a game to us, and it's something that we, support and cheer and watch the games. You ride the emotions, and then we get up the next day and we go about our days. But for these guys, it's everything. It's everything to them. And I think that's why you see guys as they get older in their careers and start, having families and stuff like that. And maybe that's part of what's going on with Val, is they realize like, whoa, there is more to life. I think Jack Johnson, that's a guy that we talk to all the time, and he's always got such a great perspective on things. So I think he's at the age and point in his life where he's like, oh man, I do have other stuff going on. I do have stuff to live for after this. But the it's just a game thing, I think it's easy for us to say, but I think there's plenty of guys in the league that don't look at it like that. And I think there's even more guys not in the NHL who don't look at it like that, who still, in their late 20s, into their 30s, are grinding every day to try to get a game, get, one chance to play in the NHL. So it's just tough, because I do think that it is that mindset that makes it hard for, you and me to really relate to what these guys go through, and, why they, sometimes end up in these situations where they need help.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying that in comparison to, the importance of his mental and physical health versus a sport, right? I mean,
totally.
But you're spot on. I mean, it is. It's elevated
totally.
for them. It's a life, and it's not just a game to them. But at the end of the day, your life is more important than the game.
Well, it's more important than whatever. Again, I think that's what I was just saying. I think that's why when guys get later in their career, they're like, oh my goodness, there's so much else in life that's amazing. And I think it takes time for guys to get there. So we're
Do
on
you
the same
remember?
page.
Do you remember those T-shirts in the '90s that were super popular? Had like a puck on it, and it just said "Hockey is life."
Yes, I think so.
Maybe we were all taking those T-shirts a little too literally.
Maybe not literally enough. No, I'm just kidding. What else you got?
I want to get to Eustace Annunen getting the game in Ottawa last night. I think it was a bit surprising not seeing Ivan Prosvetov get the start, especially because Eustace Annunen apparently coming off an injury he sustained in December. And not going to lie, I am not pleased with what I saw out of Eustace Annunen against Ottawa.
I thought he battled. I thought he was okay in the third. The mechanics, I think, are still just not where you want to see him for an NHL caliber goaltender.
I think what I really hated is he seemed to just lose the puck a ton, right? It hit him. He'd make that first save, but then he'd have no idea where it went. He starts scrambling, maybe slides himself out of position or a little too far out of the crease. I was watching on altitude, and Mark Rycroft goes, "Look at the confidence of him making that save at the top of his crease." And I'm like, no, he's lost. He doesn't know where the puck is. He's suddenly just trying to scatter around and found himself at the top of the crease.
So I made two. Really, I had two big observations on Justus Annunen, and coincidentally, they were the only two things that I didn't like, but they were maybe the most prevalent parts of his game, and you just mentioned both of them. One, I thought he really struggled to track the puck. Like you said, there were times where I felt like he was even struggling to find it before the shot got to him, and then even more so if he made the first save.
Scramble time.
Scramble. It really seemed like he was struggling to find it. And then I don't even want to call it overcommitting. To me, it looked like he wasn't stopping on his marks. I mean, like
it almost just seemed like he was guessing, right? He's just kind of sliding any and every way, just hoping the puck hits him, and it did a lot of times.
And not even necessarily that, but like there were a couple where he did track a pass from right to left, through the seam. Whatever, and I thought I was gonna get a pop out of my hip there. I was all excited for it.
And that's the only thing you're popping.
And then again, he wouldn't stop on his post, or it seemed like he wouldn't stop the slide, and suddenly the guy didn't shoot. Pause to make another pass or touched it back, and Justus Annunen seemed like he had a really hard time stopping and again not overcommitting to shots or looking like he's overcommitting to shots and passing lanes. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff. Not a lot of stuff. Those were two things that were, I thought, very, very prevalent last night that I didn't love.
Your thoughts on the thought process of going to Annunen instead of Prosvetov?
To me, with those two guys right now, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I feel a little bad for Prosvetov because I think, truthfully, he's given you probably 2 bad periods of hockey, and they haven't been good, right? That last game against Florida, there's no two ways around it. That wasn't a good game for him. That wasn't a good outing, and he was giving up bad goals at times that he couldn't be doing that. So I get it. To me, I'm going to stop just shy of using the word problem. But like, you need to get something figured out here. Georgiev's playing too many games. I didn't really have an issue with it the first quarter of the season. Georgiev likes to get in games. I really did. I thought, okay, they're feeling it out with Prosvetov. They want him to work with UC Parkala. Really get up to speed, feel comfortable with the systems, defensive schemes, all of that. And clearly they don't feel comfortable there. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not defending Prosvetov or advocating for him, but clearly they don't feel comfortable there. They might need to do something sooner rather than later with an option that they feel comfortable with. at the backup spot, because right now, whether it's on or prospect, to me, it really doesn't make a difference. You're the same guy right now.
We know that Jared Bednar loves to ride a hot goalie, right? I mean, he's very vanilla when it comes to his goalies. That's really his deciding factor. I'm sure he leans on UC, lets UC really, think about the ins and outs of goaltending and have, a little more weight on his decision. But for Jared Bednar, it's purely about who's hot right now. On Frank Saravelli's podcast, Chris McFarland said that he would like it for Alexander Georgiev to play 55 games this year. Right now, he's at 35. So that gives him 20 games more, and the Avalanche are currently sitting at 45 games played. So they have a handful of games that they need to figure out what to do
that's
when it comes to goalie.
Exactly. That's half of what's left.
So my personal theory is they want to experiment with both Annunen and Prosvetov and keep 3 goalies on board and be able to go to whoever's hotter, whether it's Annunen or Prosvetov, when Georgiev inevitably has to rest, because I don't see him. I'm going to take the over on 55 games for Alexander Georgiev, but they're going to do their best to try to, heed that a little bit.
Truthfully, JJ, I don't think they're going to do that with Annunen. I think they want him playing games. I still think the organization sees potential in him. I don't think they're going to want 2 young guys. I'm not saying you have to agree. I'm not saying I agree, but I think that's a guy out there saying that's our draft pick. We've seen large strides taken. He's had a couple very good American League years. I think they're still wondering, can we get this guy to be an NHL goaltender? And I was told earlier this season that part of the reason they sent him, not part of the reason, a big part of the reason they sent him down to the Eagles isn't because they don't like him as a goaltender. In fact, the exact opposite. They sent him down to the Eagles because they like him as a goaltender so much, and they don't want him just sitting around. That's why they did the Prosvetov thing. I don't think they're going to hold 3 goalies or carry 3 goalies. I think they're going to make a decision on one or the other. It's probably going to be Annunen sent back down. He's still waiver exempt until next season. But I mean,
I don't know. I kind of see it as like let's see what we got in these 2 before the deadline. Let's give them both a few games, see which guy can do better, and if we have to make a move for a goalie, then we will. Or we can stand pat with whichever one of these 2. It's almost like a goalie controversy for the backup position.
I mean, I guess I just don't. I mean, that's over a month away, the trade deadline. I mean, shit, dude, you'll be at 55 games played for Alexander Georgiev by then if you keep both them around and keep experimenting back and forth. Like, if that truly is the number that they want him at, and that's the internal dialogue, is we want to get him closer to 55 games by the end of the season, given where they're at in the standings and the teams around them, like, you're going to have to go get, Marc-Andre Fleury to do that. And they're not going to they're not going to go get Marc-Andre Fleury. But like that's the caliber of backup you'd need closer to a 1B to be able to ride that kind of goaltending into the end of the year. They're missing Pavel Francouz. Bad.
I think we all are.
Yeah, dude, he was the best in the room. I always love chatting with him.
Yeah, I don't know. He's at home recovering, right? Back to Czechia. So it's crazy just thinking that he's just on the other side of the world living a life where he's just been pushed aside and everybody cares about the team in front of him, and it just kind of seems like people flicked Pavel Francouz off the map, right?
Such negativity.
That's just what happens to players when they get out of the league. See Delonte West. Wanted to get to one more thing from the Toronto podcasts that the Avalanche were joining, and that's the updates on Gabe Landeskog. Both Nathan McKinnon and Chris McFarland kind of had their own 2 cents on Landeskog right now. Good to hear that he's back in, not only around the team, but he's actively participating in meetings and just all team events. They hope to move that further along to him traveling with the team. Who knows if he actually gets to playing games, but it's amazing just how much they truly missed Gabe Landeskog. I know we've all said that, we've all known that, but at times for me, it's like, yeah, but that's sports, right? You lose a player, you move on, next guy up kind of thing. But now it's really hitting me like these guys genuinely want and need him around, regardless of if he's playing.
Yeah, I had Mark, our videographer. He asked me. He said, "Who's the longest tenured Av?" If you know Mark, you know that's not how he asked it, but that's essentially. And I stopped because my instinct was to say Gabe Landeskog because it was Eric Johnson. That was my instinct. I was like, well, I said, literally, it's Gabe Landeskog, but he technically hasn't been around the last couple years, so it's hard to say that he's a long tenured. Point being, to what you were just saying, I think we all kind of immediately went to like, oh man, what a good, such an elite player, the captain. I think we just forgot. I mean, Gabe Landeskog has become a part of the fabric of the organization, not unlike the way that Joe Sakic did. Maybe not quite there yet, to where Joe Sakic was. But I mean, the way that he's kind of just woven himself into everything that happens. You hear the way that management talks about him, the way that coaches talk about him. That he really is more than a player. He's almost kind of like the buffer between the players and coaches, upper management. He like almost kind of can do both. And I just don't think that there was any way to measure and account for how badly you were going to miss that and just that presence, around just day to day. And we know Gabe Landeskog a little bit, beyond the hockey player, from the little bit that we get, we've gotten to interact with him in the past. I mean, we're given to believe he's just an outstanding, individual, a guy that everyone likes to be around, that really brings a room together. And dude, I had something really interesting said to me in an interview that we actually with Logan O'Connor that should be coming out here pretty soon. But he talked about how one of the things that's so great about this locker room is that in any locker room, and this is the phrase he used, he said it's easy to get along with like your 4 or 5 guys on the team, but it's how well can you, be friends with everybody and mesh into all kinds of different groups and, be someone that goes out to dinner with everybody and understands everybody a little bit and gets the nuances of different personalities and different groups. And I wouldn't doubt for one second that's something he learned from Gabe Landeskog. And that's part of, what always made him a good leader and such an important player for this team. And Jared Bednar would talk about it. He has Gabe Landeskog has a pulse on the locker room. He's the truest sense of how it's feeling, when they need a break, when they can push, when there's something to worry about, when they're just, I wish didn't have it. And dude, Chris McFarland in that interview with Frank Saravelli said this year feels better because we have a plan. We know it's happening a little bit more than what we did last year. And I think it was just kind of, I do think last year was just almost shocking to the organization, and now we're seeing them learn how to be without him, and now you hope that you can get him back at some point, and problem solved.
Yeah, I liked when McFarland also mentioned that sure, we can go out and get a 20-goal scorer with the cap space, but there's so many intangibles that Gabe Landeskog brings that just aren't available out there. When a team finds a player of that ilk and of that caliber, they hang on to him. They don't ever let him become a free agent or put him on the trade market. So the person you find to quote-unquote replace Gabe Landeskog is only going to be able to replace a fraction of what he brings to the team.
Totally. So, yeah, I'm with you. It's good that he's around. He's coming to meetings saying, hey, this is what I saw. This is what I think. The one thing that is unfortunate, and they've all talked about it, Gabe Landeskog talked about it at the beginning of the season. At the end of the day, he can't get on the ice with them, and it's hard to really be that same, type of leader when you're not, as he put it, going to war every night, with the team. But, dude, we see the video our boy Evan posted the other day of him getting back on the ice. It's good. That's we hadn't seen that yet, so that's a step. But for anyone that saw the video, we are talking like the earliest stages of getting back on the ice that you could possibly be in. I don't think there's any chance he's back this year, even in the playoffs. My prediction is if they go all the way to the final and they're in the Stanley Cup final, you get a Steven Stamkos moment where he dresses for Game 2 or Game 3 or something like that.
Yeah, I think the timeline has him being available during the playoffs, best case scenario. But let's be honest, this is not the type of injury that best case scenario is very likely, right? And I think with him skating, there's a plan in place, right? I mean, C-Mac, again, on that podcast, if you haven't checked it out, I suggest you do it and maybe fast forward through the first couple minutes because they're pretty brutal. But there's a plan in place and they're sticking to it. He did his first stretch of rehab in Toronto, and it seemed like McFarland was very adamant about that. I think he said something like it would be detrimental for him to try to do it here in Colorado. He had to go do it on his own. He got through that stage, and now we're on to this stage. So it's progressing. There's a plan. It's moving forward. It's just about if it keeps moving forward and we keep receiving good news throughout because, like you said, it is still in the very early stages of the return.
Well, and the one thing to keep in mind, too, and Emily Kaplan from ESPN tweeted this after that McFarland interview came out, she said it's great. The one thing to keep in mind is she was told by Chris McFarland, any setback with this injury and with not experimental, but him being one of the first, the first hockey player to do it and among, one of the first two pro athletes to do this surgery, any kind of setback basically goes back to square one. So they are going to be super duper extra slow and cautious with this and make sure that they don't suffer any setbacks and he can continue to progress towards hopefully returning to hockey.
Yeah. Another guy that is missed along with Francouz. And two more guys that are missed right now, Bo Byram and Arturi Lehkonen. What's the update on those guys? How close are we seeing them to returning to the lineup?
Not tomorrow, or I guess tonight, depending on when you're listening to this, in Boston. Jared Bednar has said a potential chance for Philly for one or both of them. So they're both getting close. They've both been here on this whole trip so far. They've been on the ice. Bowen Byram was wearing a non-contact jersey yesterday, 2 days ago. I don't know what day it is anymore. So they're getting close. Not tomorrow in Boston, but soon.
And what do you make of the Bo Byram trade rumors starting to heat up a little bit in the recent weeks?
I'm not surprised by him. I don't think the Avs are looking to move Bowen Byram. I think they would like to do everything in their power to avoid that. But as I said the other day on Altitude Radio, if the right offer came around for the right player with term that could solve your 2C problem for an extended period of time, not just between now and you hope July, then I think maybe it's a conversation you can have. But he's too good of a player. He's still too young. He's still got too much potential for them to be, just floating his name out there kind of willy-nilly. But I'm not surprised, and I have said it a few times. When they extended Devon Taves, I had a feeling that these rumors would follow, because that would have been his spot, up the lineup with Cale. So I'm not putting much stock into it. Personally, I'd be surprised to see them do it. But if they do it, I think it's got to be something significant.
Yeah, I agree, and I think we've already heard that the Avalanche aren't going to undervalue Bo Byram in a trade and just move him just to get an addition to the forward group. However, I think there's a reason we're hearing Bo Byram's name, and that's because of the emergence of Sam Malinsky. I think the Avalanche are maybe seeing Sam Malinsky really grow into his role and really make strides. Not to mention, I think there's something to be said about the comfort Jared Bednar has with Sam Malinsky and continuously calling him up, continuously using him, continuously giving him important minutes, that I think it's worth asking around what other teams are paying for a guy like Bo Byram. Because you do have a guy that can slot in. I feel like they're confident. Yes, he's young. Yes, there's some... I, right now, would rather have Bo Byram. But, again, when you need the help to the forward group, I think you're all ears. Just when it comes to test, you don't have to sell when you're just testing the market, right? You don't have to trade them when you're making calls and saying, hey, what would you guys pay for Bo and Byram?
I think it's... I agree with you on the Sam Malinsky thing. Because I think part of the concern before, you started to see some of this out of Sam Malinsky is, okay, well, you traded Connor Timmins, you traded Justin Barron, okay, so let's say you move on from Bo and Byram, who comes in and fills that spot, or now do you have a hole on your second pairing defense? That's always kind of been the question. To your point, Sam Malinsky's come in, he's been great, man. He's been great, and I think it's just kind of, and I think this is the point you're making, it's not making them say, hey, we want to trade Bo and Byram, but now it's like, okay, well, now here's another young kid who could potentially fill that role. And I don't even necessarily think it's what would you pay for Bo and Byram, but I think they're probably I'm speculating a bit here, identifying players that they think would maybe match in the price range and say, what would it cost for a guy like this? And my guess would be the reason that we've seen Bo and Byram's name out there, because I'm sure the Abs aren't hanging up the phone anymore when teams mention Bo and Byram. Like, to me, I think that's the difference of negotiation, where probably a year ago, what about Bo and Byram? Now we're good. Now it's, okay, well, what about Bo and Byram? And it's,
well, what do you got?
Are we talking one for one? Are we getting something extra?
Is it Django where Leonardo DiCaprio says, now you have my interest, or something like that, right?
Could be, I don't know.
Yeah, have you not seen Django? It's a good one. But no, not to mention Caleb Jones. It seems like a guy that they're getting really comfortable with. I think back a couple years to when Avalanche had the opposite problem. They had a lot of forwards and really no defensive depth. They trade Matt Duchene, get Sam Girard, make a couple trades here and there, acquire some draft picks, bring in Cale Makar, bring in Bo and Byram. Now they have the opposite problem. They have a plethora of D, not to mention their quick, puck-moving, smaller D, a lot of kind of the same mold defensemen, that why not just, again, test the waters, see what people are offering, and if you can strengthen the forward group, that's the one job of Chris McFarland is to make the team better. So if he has the opportunity, he will do it, and he will listen.
Yeah, no, that's the one thing. This team is patient. They don't make moves just to make them. And yeah, they're always willing to listen.
Right on. Well, we've gotten through my docket, my list of things that we needed to talk about for today. Jesse, let's wind down this podcast and give me a good story. You've just spent, 5 days in Canada, man. 3 cities. I know you've got at least a good story up your sleeve of maybe something super Canadian. The weather's been terrible all across North America. Maybe you're in some bitter cold. Hit us with something.
I do have a couple stories. Let me think of one that I should tell on the pod. You said very Canadian. When we were in Montreal, I think it's called Mount Royal. There's a big lookout over that looks over downtown Montreal. And it's almost like this, not almost. It's a hiking trail that's very mountainous. It's very wildernessy. And you get to the top and you can see out over all of Montreal. What was awesome was it's snowy, it's cold, and there's kind of this winding path that goes up. You can take these stairs. And there was a ton of people cross country skiing it, both up and down. And there were tracks worn into the snow so that they could go both directions. and we were just laughing that was like the most Canadian thing of all time. And then while we were on that walk, because the walk overlooks downtown, there was some type of demonstration going on in downtown Montreal, some type of protest. There was a couple different things actually going on. We Googled it. I'm not sure what it was. But the Mountie set off 4 flashbangs in downtown Montreal, and we it startled us, because they were loud, and we're up on top of this mountain, it's echoing out, and nobody else skipped a beat. There's smoke pouring out of downtown suddenly, and everyone's cross country skiing and continuing to hike, and we were sitting there stopping, do we need to go back to what's happening? And no one paid any mind to it, so we just kind of kept going.
Just keep drinking their coffee and reading their newspaper, right? It's just the time for the weekly flashbang.
Yeah, yeah, they know it's coming every week. Montreal might be my new favorite arena to visit, though. Both there and Toronto, just top notch all around, man.
Yeah, no, it looked like you were definitely enjoying it and in awe. So I guess I've got to add the Bell Center to my bucket list because you definitely seemed to enjoy your time there.
It was great, yeah.
Well, right on. Jess, thanks for hanging out with me this late Wednesday night. I know you got to be up early for morning skate out there on the East Coast. So enjoy Boston. Enjoy the Avs game tomorrow. Everybody out there, thanks for hanging out with us and enjoying this podcast. I hope you guys enjoy the game tomorrow too. Jesse, last thoughts before we head out of here.
I'm ready for it to not be cold.
God, me too. Me too. I hate it so much. I'm so angry. Just cursing the cold every single day. Why am I here in Colorado?
Bro.
See you, Jesse. Thanks for.
See you, JJ.
Thanks for.
This is great.
Actually, I forgot. This was our first attempt at this remote podcast here. You're across the country. I think it went well. So I hope everybody out there enjoyed it. We'll be back next week to talk some more Avalanche hockey. Thanks for hanging out with us. This has been Guerilla Hockey with JJ and Jesse.
Bye.